So for this demonstration, we need a coffee can. A coffee can that has been modified. First of all, you'll notice that there is a hole in the coffee can. In the bottom of the coffee can there is a nail-shaped hole because I used a nail to shape the hole. The top of the coffee can is going to have a postage stamp size hole cut out of it. Alright, so what I'm going to demonstrate for you is the cheapest campfire stove that you will ever encounter. Okay, all you need is a coffee can, a source of natural gas like propane, in our case methane, 2 wooden blocks, as you can see there, and a hose in order to hook up your gas. So here goes, about 5 seconds worth of gas. Make sure you put your finger over the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all you need, 5 seconds, and you've got a coffee can. And you can take the time to tell some campfire stories. You have quite a few minutes that you can use to roast some marshmallows and some hot dogs. Alright, so let's just let it happen. Demonstration has also a very unique explanation, and it is also very, very practical. So let's begin by drawing exactly what you would be seeing if you could see inside the can. First of all, if this was live, it would have scared the bejesus out of you. Because you just don't expect it. Little by little, the flame goes further down and down until you can't even see it anymore. And then it just blows up, makes this tremendous noise, and you think that your life is in peril. So, what happened? Well, see my expert drawing, hole. Okay. We actually are going to form 3 distinct layers. Well, maybe one is not that distinct. There are 3 layers of gases in this can initially. First of all, did you notice that I had to place my finger over the hole? That was because methane, natural gas, is lighter than air. So air tends to push it up. It is less dense than air. Air is more dense. So as soon as it gets into the can, there's a hole here. Air will rush in and push up the methane gas to the very top. So the first layer is methane gas. The second layer is air, and of course, air is made up of, that's right, nitrogen and oxygen, mostly nitrogen, but it is oxygen that does all the work. Now, what's the in-between layer? The in-between layer is a mixture of methane and air. So the layers are not distinct. The 2 layers between methane and air are not distinct in that there is an intermix layer. a layer that has both methane and air in it. Okay, so what's going on? As the methane escapes, it comes in contact with the oxygen that's in the air and nothing happens. Why? Because it needs activation energy. What kind of reaction is this? Well, methane is CH4, hydrocarbon plus oxygen forms, you guessed it, carbon dioxide and water. What kind of energy reaction is this? Well, you can see a flame and eventually you see the explosion. So we're talking about exothermic energy going out, not endothermic, where we have to be constantly supplying energy to it. Okay, so methane starts streaming out, comes in contact with oxygen. I light it. I use the lighter. I give it activation energy, and now I've got a nice large flame. Why is it nice and large? Because there's a lot of methane here and it's all rushing through. There's a lot of pressure pushing it up. Okay, so at first there is there's a huge flame. Think of the flame as being made up of teeny tiny little explosions. So there's lots of explosions going on right now. As the methane layer gets used up and this intermix layer starts to creep up, of course, you have less methane, so you have less pressure. And let me do some erasing here. I for intermix. So now you have less methane, smaller flame, because you have less pressure. It's just not escaping as much. Give it a few more minutes. Small layer of methane. Now, what does this have again? Methane and oxygen. The reason we use methane is because it's easily controllable. As long as you can control the amount of methane that is in contact with oxygen, then you can use this very effectively. We use methane all the time in indoor heating. We use it to heat our water heaters. Okay, we use it to heat our homes during the winter months. We will use it in lab. A little bit of methane coming out, a lot of oxygen gives you a nice controlled flame. As you can see, this flame is getting smaller and smaller as the methane layer gets smaller and smaller. Now, what's the danger? That intermix layer has both methane and oxygen together. They're already mixed in. They're already ready to go. The top layer that you see here has a lot of methane, but no oxygen. There is no oxygen here. So it can't react. The only time it can react is when it comes up to the surface. So what do you think happens when this intermix layer finally reaches the top? Well, instead of a little bit of methane blowing up at a time, you've got the rest of the methane blowing up in an instant. And that's what causes the fireball. Okay, why is this practical? Every year, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people die from the fact that methane escapes into the atmosphere in their apartment. It happens a lot up north. Methane escapes. That's why methane has added to it a gas that has a very strong odor, so you can smell it. You can't smell methane, but you can smell that other gas. So if you ever go into a room and you're smelling the smell of natural gas, you need to very carefully exit, leave the room, and call 911. Because what happens to that room if it's full of methane and full of oxygen and you come and you hit that switch? Every time you hit, not every time, some of the new um, electric switches, light switches do not produce a spark, but most of the old ones do produce a teeny tiny little spark. So what would happen if somebody were to leave the gas going inside a room so that it fills the room with methane and oxygen, and you come and you open the door and you switch, hit the light switch, and that tiny little spark occurs in that atmosphere? Then all of that methane will react with all of that oxygen to produce a big giant fireball, and now we have a fire. So that's what happens up north. That's what happens all over the world. If for some reason there is a gas leak and you've got a spark, then you have the potential for an explosion. Why do we continue to use methane even though it is explosive? Because as this demo illustrates, if it's controlled, if everything is right, then it is extremely safe. It's extremely safe. It's only when you have some kind of crack, maybe an earthquake occurs and that causes a rupture, a crack in a pipe. Now we've got trouble. Now we've got trouble. So right after an earthquake, usually there is a high potential for there to be gas explosions. So that's it. That's the coffee can. As you can imagine, it's not, this was actually done by Boy Scouts. This was invented by a Boy Scouts master, and it was done in order to entertain the Boy Scouts. You can get 5 to 7 to maybe even 10 minutes of a flame. It's not much of a flame, but you can get a little bit of flame, and you can be roasting marshmallows, and then the Boy Scouts get the big surprise in the middle of a ghost story of having their campfire stove explode on them.